The first stage in relationship is what we call attraction. You're attracted to somebody in whom you find traits that you want and you want more of, so you like to hang around with them. The second stage is what we call second awareness, when you see in another person what other people don't see. And second awareness comes through attention, affection, and appreciation. When you have the ability to listen with the eyes of the mind, the eyes of the soul, the eyes of the flesh, when you have the ability to appreciate the good things in another person, and when you feel loving affection through caring, that's the second stage. It's called second attention. The third stage is communion, where your soul connects with another soul. It's based on equality, it's based on empathy, it's based on non-judgment, it's based on integrity and telling the truth. Now, if you can get through these first three stages, which is again attraction, second awareness or second attention, communion, then there is the possibility of intimacy. Intimacy is when you totally lose your ego in that relationship, where you feel defenseless, you have nothing to defend, no point of view to defend, where you expose your vulnerability, where you go beyond time into a timeless awareness, where you're totally natural, and where you allow. There's no manipulation, there's no control, there's no cajoling, no convincing, no seduction, then you're intimate. Pleasure is not the same thing as happiness. Having fun can give you a temporary degree of satisfaction, but not fulfillment. According to Vedanta, there are 5 reasons that people suffer. Number 1 is not knowing who they are. Number 2, grasping and clinging, and that which is impermanent. Whatever you have fun with is very transient, it goes. Number 3 is being afraid of what is transient and impermanent. Number 4 is identifying with your ego, which is again the hypnosis of social conditioning, the collective convincing hallucination. And number 5, the fear of death. And all these 5 reasons of suffering are related to the first reason, which is not knowing the true nature of reality. When you're drinking, merry, pleasure, it's very transient. It's not fulfilling at all. Not that there isn't a place for it. Now, when people feel actually the intoxication of love, which is very different from just transient pleasure, you'll find that their body makes serotonin, opiates, oxytocin, dopamine all at the same time. These are the chemical mediators of what we call that intoxication that we experience, that spiritual ecstasy we feel. But that it's a simultaneity of biological responses. There's no drug that can do it, no pleasure that can do it. What we do with the present, the situations and circumstances, is a function of choice, which is grounded, of course, in awareness. So the more aware you are, the more conscious your choices are. Ultimately, the goal of all seeking is to return to where we started from. We were speaking of the stages of love. We spoke about attraction, second attention, communion, intimacy. But then beyond intimacy is something called surrender. Beyond that is passion. Beyond that is ecstasy. And ecstasy is physical, mythical, and sacred. It's the exaltation of spirit. It's total freedom. We stop identifying with anything other than your soul or spirit. It's the being who's in love, the being who has infinite creativity, the being who has conquered the fear of death.
So when I leave here, what can I do as an individual to raise my level of consciousness?
Sit down quietly every day for a few minutes, close your eyes, put your attention in your heart. Ask yourself, who am I? Wait to see what happens. Then ask yourself, what do I want? Wait for a little bit in stillness, and then ask yourself, what's my purpose? What am I doing here? And if you just do that as a start, then situations, circumstances, events, people, relationships will appear in your life to answer those questions. It's the way consciousness is set up.
It's important to recognize that living on Earth, we have the coexistence of opposite values, so that we wouldn't know light without darkness, we wouldn't know good without evil, we wouldn't know generosity without stinginess. And so every human being has the coexistence of opposite values within their nature. But we learn early on that there are certain aspects that if we express, we get adulation and affection and appreciation, and other sides of ourselves that if we express, we get negative reactions. And so all of us have learned to create a social mask. It's a self-image that we project to the world, hoping that we'll get the attention and appreciation that we're looking for. But simultaneously, it means we lock up parts of ourselves in the deeper levels of our psyche, hoping that no one discovers that. But of course, if we're not able to own and embrace those darker aspects of our nature, then they end up shaking the cages and manifesting in self-destructive ways. So we see it all the time in the political arena, where someone who is very against some particular behavior and is the first to throw the stones is usually the same one who later on turns out to have been doing the same exact behavior. And so there's an opportunity to acknowledge our shadow by just being aware of who are the people that you respond to in a very strong emotional way. We say that those that you love and those that you hate are both mirrors of yourself. Those that you love are looking in the mirror and seeing something that you want to see, and those that you hate are looking in the mirror and seeing something that you don't want to see, so you project it outwards rather than accepting it internally. So whenever you find somebody or someone that you're reacting strongly against, the question to ask, if you're interested in uncovering the shadow, is what is it about that person which is really reflecting back something about myself? At first you might say, oh, there's nothing about me that's like that person. But if you look deeper, you'll usually realize that there's some part of you that actually is resonating with that person. And if you begin to own it and embrace it and have a conversation with that, you'll find that you're much less reactive when you see it being expressed externally. So, if you get irritated consistently because someone is disorganized, it probably means there's a part of you that's actually very fearful of being disorganized yourself. When you see someone else getting away with it, it triggers your shadow saying, let me out, why does that person get to express it? As soon as you address the fact that there's that part of you and maybe give it an opportunity to occasionally not have every single page on your desk perfectly aligned, not always have your bed perfectly made when you leave, but to be a little bit disorganized, then your shadow isn't feeling so disempowered, and then you won't find yourself reacting so strongly to people outside of yourself.
So could you tell me a bit more about how you'd need to accept that and embrace that side of you to be whole?
Yes, there's a process, there's a process of uncovering and then embracing the shadow, because every so-called negative aspect of our personality at some level serves a positive role. So if there's a part of you that seems to be quite cynical, that would most likely be a shadowy aspect of some fear-based behavior. But that cynical aspect of you came into your life at a time where it was protective on some level. So what you really want to do is, when you identify a trait that you believe or have been given feedback is not in your best interest, you want to ask yourself, how is that trait serving me, and is it still serving me, and is there some other way to express that need without making everyone around me think that I'm cynical or caustic or arrogant?